to get that going. Preparing the live stream. All right, we should be live on YouTube. It's always hard to tell. Well, welcome. It's Clear Vision Wednesday time, and I'm Claudia Mühlenweg. I am the creator of the Naturally Clear Vision method, using the Bates method and other modalities to help you get clear vision and get rid of your glasses. And today I'm so excited. I'm like, my heart is pounding. I'm so excited. I have a super special guest today. One of my mentors, Dr. Ray Gottlieb, and I will add the little spotlight so that you can see him and Ray can unmute himself. So I just want to share a few words about you, Ray, before, but basically, you know, when I first met you, that was, I think, at a conference in Boulder, Colorado, at the Vision Conference, the American conference, right? And you were sharing so many cool stories, and I like immediately had a crush on you, even though I'm not really usually into older guys, but you're such a cool cat. I don't know how else to describe it. Apart from the fact that you are a brilliant vision teacher, a functional optometrist, you know, the dean of the Syntonics College. I mean, I put the bio in the YouTube feed, so I gave you, there's so much, I don't want to waste any time with reading all your credentials, but welcome to this tribe. And I'm so excited for you to share your special techniques today.
Thank you. I don't know if I can live up to all that.
There's something wrong with the sound. Maybe you have to take the AirPods out. We don't hear you.
Oh.
Now we can hear you.
Am I there?
Yeah. Now we can hear you. Great. Yes.
Okay. So, yes, I'm an optometrist and have been for decades. I almost said centuries. And I got involved in Bates in 1970. I started reading his book, and I was very interested because it reminded me of all the things that I was already involved with, which is yoga and Tai Chi and meditation. And I said, gee, that's interesting, you know, that he's saying you can improve vision by doing the things that I'm already interested in. So I thought, well, I'm an optometrist. I'm a mild myope, nearsighted, and I like the kinds of things that he's doing. So I started reading his book, and a lot of it I didn't quite understand or get, or wasn't able to do. But still, I was doing an experiment, and I wanted to make sure that I was doing, really giving it a chance and not just rejecting it. And I just worked maybe harder than anything else I've done, working on trying to improve my my health and my eyes. And so I did. I was able to reduce my myopia, and after a year and a half of really being involved in working on it, I succeeded. I didn't have any more. I could see 20/20 out of each eye, and then I thought to myself, who's going to be working as hard as I worked? You know?
No, one thing I want to say, you know, you studied optometry, so, you know, and I know you started with functional or behavioral optometry from the get-go, so it wasn't like traditional optometry. But, you know, when you still talk to optometrists, most people, when my clients come back to the eyes got better, they usually say, oh, I must have measured wrong. So I think you were from the very get-go, like really open to Bates compared to almost all optometrists who would be like, this doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few left that are into Bates. But Bates is actually what led me into behavioral optometry, which is a kind of natural approach by optometrists to improve not myopia or hyperopia or presbyopia, because there's like some kind of a block in front of our eyes because of what we were taught in school, but other kinds of things, using your eyes more comfortably, becoming a better athlete, becoming a better student, and cross-eyed problems and other kinds of binocular problems. And anyway, so it was actually Bates system that got me into that. That's a long story. I won't go into how that happened, but it was, again, just one of these funny things that happen along the way. You meet somebody and something happens, and suddenly you're involved in something you didn't know about. Anyway, So I worked on my eyes. It took a year and a half. Um, One of the things that happened is that in that process of first being able to get a flash of clear vision and then having them happen more regularly, took about 6 months for that first flash of clear vision to happen. And then maybe a month and a half later, I got another flash of clear vision, and they started to become more frequently. And I thought, I wonder if I can make it happen. And I was actually at an optometry meeting, and I actually made it happen. I made a flash of clear vision happen and made it sustained. And I got better and better at making it happen. And pretty soon, I was so good that when I'd be reading or something, I'd look up to see how long it took me to get my vision clear at the distance. And so I began to notice that it didn't take me any time at all. I could look down here and see clearly, and right away see clearly at distance. And I went, gee, that means that I've done it. I've success. But my nearsightedness in terms of the measurement of my eyes still showed nearsightedness. And probably about 3 or 4 months later, that also disappeared. So I had zero prescription for both eyes.
Can you share a little bit about that? Because Dr. Jacob Lieberman also talks about that, right? That sometimes, like, because I had the same experience, my vision was already great, but when I went to an optometrist, they would still show like a +1 something something. Can you, like, I'm just curious. I know we didn't talk about this ahead of time. I'm just curious. So it takes a little while for the eye, right? Share a little bit of why that could happen, that you can see a line on the eye chart, but the measurement might still be that you're far or nearsighted.
That's right. And so the thing that people don't know, or at least don't think about, is the fact that it's not just the optics of the eye that makes vision clear. There's a whole neurology around it. There's what they call bottom up, which is the retina tells the brain what it's seeing, but the brain also tells the visual system, including the retina to some extent, whether it's clear or not. I mean, it comes in both directions, top down, which means from the central brain down through the lower parts, which is the eyes and optic nerve and some of the optical areas. And so it's possible to clear up your vision without your prescription changing. In fact, if somebody has a -3 prescription, there's some people, maybe the average is seeing maybe 2200 or 2150 in their visual acuity, but there's other people whose vision is much worse than that. It's the same prescription, but it's a lot worse than that. And there's some people that can see maybe 2040 with that prescription, -3 or 4. So it's not a one-on-one situation like a magnifying glass where you're trying to focus the sun. That's all optics. But in the brain and the eyes and that whole way it works together. So you can actually have pretty good vision but still have prescription. In fact, one of my early patients was a woman, I think she was 28, very involved in wanting to improve her vision. And she was a -13. She has a quite really high level of prescription, had been that way since she was very young. She had 6 diopters of astigmatism, which is quite a lot. And she worked as hard as I did to improve her vision. And I remember her visual prescription eventually came down to about -5 or 6. So, and her astigmatism went away in the process of all the stuff that we were doing. And I was constantly making up new things for my patients on the basis of what they needed. And anyway, she could sometimes see 2040 with that -6 sphere prescription, which was amazing to me. But that's the answer. The answer is there's not a one-on-one correlation between your prescription and what visual acuity you have. And so if your eyes get better, then it means that you're training really the part of the brain that learns how to see, to make things clearer. And even telescopes like the Hubble telescope can't quite get the optics perfect, but they have they have electrical circuits that clear it up and make it clear. And now they can see way further into the past universe than they could before they began to use those electronic things. It's like Dolby. If you know what Dolby is, it came along maybe 40 years ago. It was a way of filtering the sound so that you wouldn't hear all of the background noise. It was an electric process of clearing the sound that you heard on your old record players and eventually tape players. So it's a common thing to be able to improve the quality of sound and the quality of light through electronic circuits and in the brain through brain circuits. Anyway, that's a long answer to that question, but
well, I think that was great because sometimes the optometrists insist like you need to, this is what we measured, and vision is so fluid, and like you said, the perception in the brain. I've seen the same thing with somebody -3 reading completely different lines on the eye chart, right? Different people. So the perception is really, yeah. Anyway, I don't want to take time away from you. So today, maybe do you want to share a little bit about that connection of the fovea or the foveal aim and the focus and the fusion, like, maybe a little bit of the explanation before we get into the actual practicing this stuff.
Okay, so Bates talked a lot about central fixation, and that means that you're looking in a very clear way about small details and seeing that where you're looking, where you're aiming your eye, is actually blacker or clearer than parts of the visual field that you're not looking at, even parts that are quite close to where you're looking. And one of the things I'm addicted, just like fishermen are addicted to fishing, I'm addicted to finding new information on the web. I'm constantly reading stuff and forgetting a lot of it, but reading stuff and finding stuff that I find on the stuff that I'm reading that brings me to other things. And so there's a lot of information about all the things that Bates talked about, pretty much every one of them. That was 100 years ago, but there are articles that are supporting his views. And like you have to keep moving your eyes in order to be more relaxed and to be able to see. But central fixation is that you're aiming the really best part of the eye for seeing small details to the area that you're paying attention to. Well, it turns out that there can be a split or misalignment between where you're aiming your fovea and where you're attending to. That your eyes are not necessarily looking where you're aiming, or they look where you're aiming, but not where your attention is. And so there's a great flexibility in the way the retina works and in the way the fovea works on that basis. I hope that's clear. And so when I started reading more and more about Bates's descriptions, especially in Bates's magazine, Clear Vision, that he's talking about learning how to aim your attention where your eyes are aiming. And it's a much more dynamic situation. It's not like a camera. It's a really dynamic situation that has a lot of aspects of what's involved in vision that all have to go into how the brain works to let us see well. And any one of those things can throw us off and make us have to strain in order to try to see. And Bates was kind of right there. He said, you want to learn how to aim your focus where your eyes are aiming, where your fovea is aiming, and learn how to do that on a finer and finer level. And as you work on doing things finer and finer, like threading a needle, you got to be calm in order to make that happen. But if you're just, doing something much more gross, you don't have to be so calm. You can be tight and still do it. So anyway,
Sorry. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
There's a question on YouTube, and I think this is a great question because I hear that all the time, and I think you have a brilliant answer. So Sriram is asking, why do we get a tendency to see a large area equally clear all at once when we can only see one small point clearly? If we need to move the eyeball constantly, then why does staring tendency take over? I'm not quite sure why the staring, like, but basically he's asking like, well, what, and I hear that a lot from myopes, especially, right? That feeling of like, I cannot use it, like it's so much work to use central fixation, like it's so much of an effort. And maybe that's what you're leading into, but I thought this was an interesting question. So why do we
yeah, I mean, when you're trying hard, Bates is really against effort. The eye will naturally do what it needs to do to see clearly. But when we're trying, then we tighten our body. One of the things that I read an article recently is that there's a big muscle back here. The whole back is a connected muscle. And when we try to hold our eyes still and look hard, that part of your back, the whole back, all the way from the top of your hips, all the way to the back of your skull, can become tight. And so, and it also explains why a lot of nearsighted people are, you know, their posture is like this. Their shoulders are up. Yeah, and so it's great. So there's an article that talks about that. And the idea of stopping all the movement in order to see more clearly isn't the way the vision works. It's not the way the visual cortex works. It's a whole different function that nobody quite understands at this point, but it's much more dynamic. It's much more intricate than people understood 100 years ago. And because unless you're keeping up with the latest literature, you still have a much more simplified version of what's going on than what's really going on. And so there's a huge paradigm shift going on now in medicine and neurophysiology and health. And so many things, we're on the verge of big changes. Hopefully most of them will be positive, but there is for that. So we have to keep moving our eyes because it's the movement of the eyes that's part of that system in the brain that helps us refine the image and see better. But one of the things that happen, as I was just talking about, is that we don't put our attention where our eye are aiming. And you may have heard of something called amblyopia, and that's where somebody has one eye that sees well, and the other eye, the best vision it has is sometimes 20/200 vision. And it's called amblyopia anoxia, which is, I don't think I pronounced that right, but which means that we don't know the cause of it. There's nothing in the retina that shows us that there's a problem. And it's possible to allow a person to see where their eye is aiming, where their fovea is aiming. There's certain ways that you can use certain equipment. Like, for example, if I look in somebody's eye with a plioscope, which is like, I can look in the eye and see all the different parts. And what this one has that's special, I can aim it right at the fovea, press a button that flashes a really bright light. And so that after that, when the person looks, their vision is blocked because their eye has got a big flash on it. It takes a while for the after image to go away. And so you can mark the person's fovea and have them look at something, and what they look at is not their fovea, but it's some other part of their eye. And there's all kinds of ways in which the fovea actually can move around. If you have a stroke that cuts off half of the vision in one part of your visual field, your actual anatomical fovea stays where it is. It's still a piece of your anatomy, but the fovea moves away from where the split is, so you can have information on both sides of it. And so it's what they call a pseudofovea, and the whole retina reorganizes itself around that pseudofovea. And what that means is that when you look with your fovea, then you have things above and below. It's like the center of your vision is there, and then all of the peripheral parts are not there. I mean, are there, but they're in the periphery, organized around the fovea. Well, that new place, which might be, several millimeters away from the original fovea, that becomes they call it foveal centric around that. And you get better color vision there. It just does, and you have the best vision there, and you learn how to move your eye around with respect to that different place that anatomically is not the fovea, but it's a pseudofovea.
That is
that
so
develops.
cool. I had never heard of that because, I mean, the retina is part of the brain, and we know about neuroplasticity, right? And that the brain is, that certain parts of the brain can take over other parts if they're damaged. But I had no idea that the fovea is literally like creating a kind of a clone or something that moves to the field. That's super cool. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, people with macular degeneration where their fovea gets destroyed, we can teach them how to look with another part of their eye. And pretty soon they can read larger print, but they can read because now they're not trying to use their fovea because their fovea is destroyed by the disease, but they can now read because they're using another part of the retina that we alerted them to and trained them to use. And if they're looking at something else from one position to another, they aim with that new foveal area, that new place that we taught them. Anyway, so things are not as simple as they seem. We have a simplified version of things. One of them being visual acuity is not totally aligned with your prescription, with how much myopia you have. So to get into the topic of today, we're going to go to something that I want to talk about. So converging the eyes is when your eyes look closer. And when you look closer, I don't know if you can see this, but if this is the lines of sight of my eye, and I'm looking far away, then the lines of my sight, we call it the line of sight, is going to be looking fairly parallel. But if I look at something close, then my eyes are going to be crossing. And one eye will, and so if something is this distance, then I want to aim both eyes together. And so as you converge, which means that you're bringing that focus point closer, you'll see it if I just use 2 sticks. Okay, I got chopsticks here. I got one near the camera. You can see where my eyes are. And if I look at another one that's closer, you can see that my eyes crossed. Okay, and we call that convergence. And if I were looking at this and then I looked at the camera, then my eyes are diverging. Okay, so I got very interested in that and made charts and so forth for that. But I was looking for a way to increase my stereoscopic vision. I wanted my eyes to be able to aim and see the depth that my eyes were aiming at. So if I'm looking at something close, then my eyes are going to be turned in and my muscles are going to tell my brain how much in they're turned. And I can use that information to say, my eyes are converged or fixating here. I'd like my focus to be there as well. So for example, if somebody's nearsighted and they're wearing glasses, a nearsighted person is a person who can see up close, but they can't see far away. If they put their glasses on, then they have to, they're actually looking, the minus lenses actually create a virtual image that's close to their eyes. So they're looking far away, but these minus lenses are actually making what they call a virtual image, an image that appears out here. And so that's what my eye is seeing. So in a way, my eyes are aiming at distance because of the glasses. I can see a distance, but but they're focusing here. They're aiming at the distance and they're focusing here because so therefore there's a mismatch between where my eyes are aiming and where my focus is because of the nearsightedness. And in order to improve the myopia, it occurred to me that I want to aim where my focus is. Aiming meaning the convergence part, focus meaning the optical part. So there's a big mismatch. There's a lot of things that we do in behavioral optometry around attempting to improve the ability to see the same distance away as you're focusing. You're focusing and you're aiming your eyes at the same place. So I wanted to see if I could improve my ability to look at the world and see it in 3 dimensions, so that my aiming of my eye told my brain something about how far away it was, that there was a match between how much I was converging and how much my perception was projecting how far away that is, because that can get all scattered. It can be not coordinated. So I thought, I wonder what would happen if I was able to connect it. So after doing several different ways of doing that, I thought about doing something like this. So you can see this. I got 2 sticks, and what I want you to do is hold up your finger. See if I can hold these steady. Not really.
Basically, you want us to hold them parallel to each other, right, between the fingers somehow, and then.
Yeah, or maybe they can do it on screen.
Okay.
On screen.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
Good.
So if you look at your, can they see you, Gloria? I mean, Claudia?
What do you mean?
Can the people see you?
They can only see me when I'm speaking. So whoever is speaking is going to be highlighted.
Okay. So I wish I could stand these up.
Well, you can put them right between your finger, like, well, it's not easier. It's like this.
See. Okay, so I've got these 2 sticks, and I'm going to look at my finger. So this is how far away I'm holding them, and this is how close together they are. And I'm going to put my finger, and I'm going to look at my finger way up here and out here, and somewhere in between, about halfway, is where I want your finger. So you're going to see 1 finger, and you're going to see 3 sticks. Oh, I'm supposed to be holding this.
So
Okay,
basically,
so I need a little.
Basically, it looks like a W almost, right? Like 3 sticks. Like if you have them a little angled. Okay, I have mine a little angled. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so the idea is you're looking at the computer screen, and you take your finger and you bring it until you see 3 fingers and 1 and 3 sticks. Okay, so I think it's, but maybe not.
Oh, you were just a little chopped off. Your connection was weak, but I think we have you back now.
Okay, so I don't know how to find out whether people actually can see it or not.
Well, I look at the chat. We have the Zoom chat for the Clear Vision Club. We have the YouTube chat. So just to be really clear, you're holding, like you're either looking at Ray's, or I did it with my own. You hold your 2 sticks or pencils up, and if you know, like you hold them up, and then you use your finger. But you have to kind of. I had to.
Okay, so the question that I see here from Susan is, what do you look at? And what you're looking at is your finger. You look at your finger, and in the background, if your finger is at the right distance away, you'll see 3 sticks. Does that solve the problem?
Okay, so just sees 3 sticks. Yeah, I had to wiggle around a little bit. Yay, Trisha sees it too. YouTubers, let me know if you have any issues or if you can get this. Do you see 3 sticks?
Okay, and don't forget to really move your fingers. Don't just keep them in the same place.
Yeah, exactly. So, move the finger a little bit back and forth just in case. Somebody's asking, oh, YouTube, you cannot. Oh, YouTube says we cannot see you at all, Claudia. Well, it's okay if you see Ray and just hear me. That's okay.
Okay, so a few people at least got it. I see 3, but not 3 fingers, 1 finger. You're looking at your finger, and you see 3 sticks.
One person says Wendy says, I saw it, but it goes away quickly.
You have to keep looking at your finger. And you'll notice behind your finger are 3 sticks. 1 is right behind your finger. And the question is, if you can do that, so you move your finger so that it's not quite covering the middle stick. You keep looking at your finger and notice whether or not that middle stick appears to be closer to you than the computer screen. Can you see that the middle finger, I mean, the middle stick is, as I move my finger toward me and away from me, there's a point at which my finger is going to be right next to a stick that appears to be much closer to you than the other sticks.
Yeah, it looks like it's pointing at me. The middle one is like as if it's pointing at me almost.
Yeah, there's kind of an angle that you can get,
Right.
especially if I increase the angle. Okay, can people get that?
Let me see.
Yeah, it's like a 3D movie.
One person asked me, does this work if you only see with one eye? No, it won't. You definitely need two eyes. Beatrice says, I see one finger and 3 sticks, not stable. Yeah, this is right. You have to practice this. This is like a good discovery, though.
Okay, so what I'm trying to get you to see is that because we've got 2 sticks that turn into 3 sticks, when you look at your finger and your finger's in the right place, it creates a depth effect. You can actually, I can see my finger is almost like I can touch the stick because it's this close to me. So I'd like to know if people can do that. So you want to.
Somebody says I can see 3 sticks and 4 sticks. Yeah, the 4 sticks happen when you're not quite, either the distance isn't right or maybe your sticks are too far.
The 4 sticks is when your finger is not in the right place. You have to kind of look at your finger and then kind of notice the sticks and say, oh, now, yeah. So it's not so unsteady. So does everybody have a chopsticks? Everybody got 2 sticks?
Yeah,
something like that.
Everybody does. And I see in the chat here, I see the stick closer than the real sticks. I mean, just the center one, right, Andrea? You should just see the center one. Yeah, the
center one is the only one that's going to be closer to you.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's in space. It's almost like you can touch it. It's in space. It's
Trisha
also possible.
Sorry, Trisha has a good question. I didn't mean to interrupt. Should we do this with glasses off?
At this point, it doesn't. I mean, when you're practicing this, it would be good to have them off. But right now, it depends. I don't think it matters because I'm trying to teach something that it doesn't matter if you're wearing your glasses or not, unless you're wearing those funny kind of bifocals that distort everything. Okay, so what I tried to just demonstrate was that if you're looking at something closer and you have 2 sticks, it's going to turn into 3 sticks. The middle stick will be sticking out toward you. And that's what I would hope you to see. And but on the other hand, if I find something in the room to look at and I align my sticks, I keep looking at like I'm looking at a lamp. Okay, and I move my sticks until I see 3 sticks. I'm looking at it's a little easier for me with this side up. Okay, I'm looking at the lamp, and I've got 3 sticks. And if I move the sticks apart, it begins to look like the middle stick is sticking out away from me, just like the when you were looking at something closer, your finger, you saw 3 sticks, but the middle one was closer to you.
So just to be clear, we're switching gears. We did converging before, where you looked at your finger. Now you hold the sticks just a little bit, like maybe like a little V shape, right, or parallel, and you look into the distance or something in your room. And now the middle stick appears to be going further away, right? Correct?
Yes. Now, most people, they know that the 2 sticks are where they're holding them, and they have a hard time making their brain see that something is farther away, that the middle stick is going to look farther away. And that's why I started with looking closer with your finger. It's easier to see it by going up above and saying, where is that's where it is. I can feel it, almost like I can feel it. It's right there. Okay. It's easier to see the depth effect when it's coming closer to you, when you're converging. What we're trying to do now is to see it far away. So, so if I see 3 and I'm looking at the lamp and I go, well, the middle stick looks like it's going to be here, but it's not. It's way out there. I'd have to have a ruler to see how far that middle stick is projected out into space. So anybody able to get that?
I'm looking at the chart here. I can see it. And Wendy's asking, how does this help us see better? And my middle stick is behind. Okay. Sounds like, from what I can tell, everybody is seeing it. Yeah, I haven't gotten anyone who says they can't get it.
Oh, that's great. So what you want to do is to begin to work with seeing the stick farther and farther away, because what usually happens to people, I'll say, okay, now they've got 3 by diverging, and I'll say, does the middle stick look about this distance away? And they look and they say, yeah, and it's usually, I'm pointing right to where the other two sticks are. And I'll say, well, how about now? Now it looks like the finger's closer. Now it looks like the finger's closer too, and all of a sudden they're able to see an inch or two that the middle one is farther away, maybe an inch or two. Okay, for some people it takes a long time. Other people, they can get it quite simply, quite easily. Okay, so eventually you can learn how to project it out into space, and you get it there by comparing how far away something is with where the middle stick looks. And eventually you can make it so that I can look at the lamp, and I can go behind the lamp by pushing my sticks further away. I can come back and now it's aligned with the lamp, and now it's closer to me than the lamp, the middle stick. Okay, I'm always looking at the lamp and I'm pushing it this way, or I can turn it out, and now it's aligned with the lamp, and now it's farther away than the lamp. So, you know, it's hard to do this by Zoom because I can't see what everybody's doing to give them hints on what to do. You're going to be looking at.
Basically, what you're saying is when you have the 3 middle sticks and you see that the middle one is further away, right? Then at some point, let's say I'm looking at this lamp, I see the 3 sticks, and now it feels like the middle stick is like growing like Pinocchio's nose. It's growing and growing, and now it's touching the lamp, and it's almost going through it. So basically, at some point you shift, when you have the 3, you shift your focus away from this, but you shift it more and more into the distance, and then the stick seems to grow. That was my experience, right?
Okay. Yeah, so there is a handout that you sent everybody, the Chopsticks Fusion.
Yes. Everybody has the link.
Okay. Yeah, so you have a description of it, and hopefully that will be enough to allow you to do this. Okay, and I'll just go into my story. So I decided to try this a method of projecting into space, and I would sit down at the computer and I'd say, okay, I'm going to look at the edge of the computer, and now the stick is right next to the edge of the computer, and I can open the sticks wider, and now it's at the wall. I can see it on the wall. And I go over here, and there's a vase, and now it's behind the vase, and now it's in front of the vase. Now it's right aligned with the vase. And so I would spend 5 or 10 minutes, especially things hanging from the ground, from the ceiling. There's a lamp, I mean a fan, and it's got a little thing dangling down from it. And I can just go, so wow, I've gone all the way out to there. So as I worked on it, I was able to see farther and farther in the distance to get that middle stick projected into the distance. And I live near a beach, and I'm on the 8th floor of a condo, and I could go out and make it go as far as that boat that was several hundred feet out. Or I could make it go onto a building that I was looking out of the window at on the other side. So Well, what happened is I got really good at projecting farther and farther away, at seeing the space behind something, seeing the space in front of something. And at some point, after doing this for a number of weeks, or maybe it was even more than a month, I began to notice that I could actually see the space behind something. It was like, instead of being flat up against the wall, I could actually see that it was 1.5 feet in front of the wall. I could see solid space. And I began to work on that. I would find different things. I would go outside and look down the hallway or different things. And I would just try to see how far and how easily I could project the sticks by finding things to compare the distance of the middle one with and changing the separation of the sticks. By the way, it can't be any wider than the separation between your eyes, because your eyes don't want to actually diverge. You can't really do that easily for most people. So I want to be no farther apart than here. I can be closer, but I don't want to be any farther apart than what you see now on my picture. Okay, so what happened is I began to really be able to see, it felt like a solidness to space, that things were actually in space. I could see how far away something was away from compared to the wall. I mean, it was great. I was doing that, and so the first thing is to be able to do what we're doing today, which is to be able to get the illusion at all with the sticks, and that's described in the article that I sent. But the next is to be able to find different things to look at and to see if you can move the sticks in a way that will make it behind or in front of what you're looking at, and eventually to do it to various things and go beyond what you could do before, and then to begin to see that. The next level is to begin to see that depth kind of feeling where you're in almost like you're underwater and you can feel the volume of the water, but this is in air, which is like water in a way. It's sitting there, and I'm seeing that kind of solidness to the space I'm looking at. And so I began to then practice that. I would say, okay, I can see the space now. How long can I keep seeing all of that spaceness, that three-dimensionality, if I don't use the sticks? So I'm training myself to see space, distance, depending upon how far apart my eyes are converging. I'm coordinating my perceptual projection of space, how far away things are, with how far my eyes are actually aiming. I'm coordinating those two things. And in the process, I'm getting this special feeling of three-dimensionality that is, that before that I didn't have before, in spite of all the things that I did to work with my vision. So, so that became a really interesting thing. And then one day I was looking out our window on the lawn, and I said, you know, there's something weird going on with my eyes. And I just all of a sudden realized that the palm trees that were underneath my window from the 8th floor were sticking way up into space. I began to see that palm tree was not as tall as that other palm tree. I could see that the fence was actually going vertical. It was a vertical fence, and I would just see it as kind of this blob out there, even though I had good acuity. But I began to notice that I suddenly, without using the sticks, began to see in a kind of stereoscopic vision that I could only otherwise see when I was using stereoscopes and other kinds of devices. But in my naked vision, without those specialized pieces of equipment, I knew that things were in front of or behind each other, but not to the extent of what I found with the eye, using the sticks. And then finally being able to say, wait a minute, I'm not seeing that way. It's another way of seeing. It's another way of seeing. I can be doing something like cutting an orange, and I go, wait a minute, I'm not seeing it in 3D, and without any effort at all, without trying to do anything, suddenly I'm seeing my knife closer to me, cutting into this solid orange, and I can look at things in the world and say, oh, wait a minute, I'm not looking that way, and then look that way. And And what I began to get the feeling of when I'm looking and seeing that way was that I was actually aiming my eyes, aiming my vision through my eyes. I was looking through my eyes, not somewhere else in my brain looking. So in other words, I learned how to put my fovea and my attention in the same place. That something moved, I could feel it move in my head that first time that it happened, when I was able to make it 3D just by saying, gee, I want to see 3D now. Suddenly I just felt this little thing happen with no effort at all. And what it felt like, I was aiming my attention exactly where my eyes were aimed. And I thought that's what Bates is trying to get people to do, is to learn how to aim their eyes where their attention is. And there are times that I'm looking and I'm not doing that. I can see the difference. And I go, oh, wait a minute. Ah, that's better. And so, so I think it's profound, and it's worth reading that article and trying to make sense of what I've been talking about. And for me, it took, months of doing it before those kinds of experiences happened. And I just practiced it, and then I stopped practicing it, and then I go, well, wait a minute, I should practice more. And so I'll go for 3 or 4 or 5 days practicing it, and I'll be able to get it even stronger. Okay, so that's really what Claudia wanted me to talk about, because she likes it too.
Yeah, I love it. And there's a whole bunch of questions, and you call it the third dimension of vision. And I think to me, it's like you said, it's almost like being in one of those 3D movies, like what you said, this, like, it's almost like this hyper real 3D vision. And when you think about it, most people, as they get older, they lose that depth perception and then falls, so this is super fascinating to me. When we first did this, and I think we did it in Portland the first time you showed this. And do you want to, there's a bunch of questions, but I'm curious because you're always, here's what I love about you. You're always observing, you're like, oh my God, what just happened? Like, instead of like, oh, you don't pay attention. You're like, how did this happen with the chopsticks? Did you just happen to have 2 chopsticks in your hands and suddenly, like, how did you discover this? Because it's so cool. I love how
there was a piece of optometric equipment that used stereo scopic like 3D movie glasses, and it was printed on transparency, and the idea was that you could project these things into space. And so mine, and they, after a while, after it would fade, and you have to go and buy another set of these things. They were just one set. They were like $100, and I went, that's ridiculous, $100, and I'm going to give these to people to use at home. And I thought, well, maybe I don't need to get the polarized glasses to do this. Maybe I can just do this by having a chart and looking through the chart. So I made something like this. Okay, I made circles, and I left a hole in the circles, like I called it the broken circle chart, where I can look at it. And when I look at a right distance and they're separated, you can see how they're overlapped. But if I look at a distance, it'll do like the sticks, where I can actually move. I'm looking at the lamp again, and now I'm separating these. And now the middle circle, you get when you do this, you don't just see 3 sticks, you see 3 circles that are overlapping, like the Olympic circles. And I've got this break in there. So now I can make it look like it's behind the lamp and in front of the lamp. And so for a long time, I used these and I taught these. But, one time when I was getting ready to teach a workshop, and there I am, always a little bit late, cutting up, printing these out and cutting them up. And I said, there's got to be an easier way, than me having to go through all this work to make sure that they're all the same height and the same size and so forth. And then one day it occurred to me that I could use 2 sticks. I wondered what would happen. And so I took 2 sticks, and what happened was I changed something about my vision, and I see in a different way now. I can read better because my attention is now where I'm looking, and it goes away because I still have to work to change my habit. My habit for 80 years has been to not aim my eyes where my fovea is aiming, to not, put my attention where my fovea is aiming. And I've got to change that habit. And I do that by paying attention, by reminding myself, by learning more and more how to relax. If it strains me, I do palming. Anyway, I started doing it with the sticks and I went, wow, this is great. And I called it Chopsticks Fusion because they're come in pairs. Chopsticks come in pairs. And so that was
I remember you taught the circles at a different conference. And I didn't get the circles immediately, but the chopsticks I totally got. So I was like, I thought it was an easier way, and I love how they expand. But we have a whole bunch of one question I want to ask you. So how often did you practice this? Did you practice this like in order to have that super 3D vision that you now have? Did you practice this every day? And you said earlier 5 to 6 minutes or something like that. How often did you?
Yeah, I don't know. I would just sit at my computer and I would look at the place where we hang all of our clothes, one of those clothes hanger things, anything that had space behind it.
Right.
I would try to find that how far away it looked, and then I would push them away or push the sticks further apart, and I would learn how to see behind it, in front of it. And if you read the article, it'll say it's important to not get the sticks in front of what you're trying to look behind. Because if the stick is there, if that's what I'm trying to look behind, the illusion is not going to be there to see behind it, because the stick will be, in front of it. So you'll have to read that just to understand what I'm saying.
Is that just to be clear? Because I gave everybody this chart and this has instructions. So that's the only thing I gave them. So is there different instructions for the Chopstick Fusion?
Yeah, it's a different purpose. And
I'm just saying, I didn't send that out. All I sent out was this that had the instructions of the 3 dots. So this is what we send out, this one.
I see. So you want to send out the one called Chopstick Fusion.
Okay, I will put that in the YouTube link. We'll put that in the YouTube link then. We didn't get to do this one, but this one everybody can download. There's instructions to do this, right?
Yeah, I'll just give a little sense. This idea of where eyes are aiming, whether they're aiming together or not. Everybody's heard of being cross-eyed and being wall-eyed. You can also be not able to put your eyes together, but there's other aspects of that. So that there's most people, if you cover one eye, that eye that's covered is not going to be looking at the same place. It'll move. Okay, my eyes are looking together, and I cover one eye, and the eye that I covered no longer has any feedback. You don't have any fusion where the two eyes are aiming the foveas together. And so it doesn't know where to look. And some of us, we kind of are tight about things, and our eyes want to converge. So when I cover it, it goes in a little bit, or some people it goes in a lot. Other people it goes out. So we call that aphoria. Okay, so the eyes, and so it's very nice if when you cover one eye and you're looking at something, that eye stays relatively in the same aim as it was before you covered it. And if your eye tends to go in, for example, I'm seeing single, it's fine, I cover the eye, and the eye goes in, that means that I'm always straining my eyes to make sure I'm not seeing double, because this eye doesn't want to be there, it wants to be in, when I cover it. So now I have to strain back to be able to stay single. So it's a stress for the eye, and Bates was really trying to get people to relax all the stress. And so one way to do that is to do exercises like the ones we're just talking about that help to improve your aiming of your eyes, because now you're coordinating the convergence, the amount of convergence you're doing with your projection of how far away things are. You're aligning that, and it takes the stress down. And what happened to me as I got to be able to see more and more of this kind of 3 dimensions, my aphoria, my overconvergence, which I've had and done all kinds of things to try to make it go away, that went away. I was one day looking and saying, wait a minute, I don't have that movement anymore. My eye didn't turn in when I covered it. And this eye didn't turn in when I covered it. And that was amazing to me, because I'd done all kinds of exercises invented exercises. But when I did this, after several months of doing it, I was able to, without knowing I was doing it, I got rid of that phoria. And my eyes are much more able to aim where they're looking because of that. So the question was, how long do you practice? I did it several times a day. I was really curious. I enjoyed it. It's fun once you begin to see the projection. And I would sit there for, could be 6 minutes, it could be 10 minutes. I never really timed it. But I would do the edge of the computer. If you have a white screen, you can actually make it go into the screen, and the letter that's next to it looks there, but your chopstick, middle chopstick, is actually going into the page, behind the page, because it's just white and you don't notice it. So anyway, and so I would do that all, not all day long, but whenever I had a chance, because it was like being addicted to Sudoku or something. So, you just want to go back and do it more. And so that's how it wasn't a task. I mean, it wasn't a drain. It was just something, gee, let me see if I can do that palm tree way across right next to where the next river is. I say, yeah, wow, I can go behind it. I can go in front of it. And I would just do that. I would do it when I was looking at the ocean and so forth. You can use your fingers too.
I was just thinking that because like when you're traveling, right, you might not always have pencils or chopsticks. So unless you have long hair and you use chopsticks to, do a little bun, but you can use your fingers. So I have a bunch of questions, and then we have some questions that I do want to get, in. So one of my questions was also like with glasses, right? You talked about how glasses, especially when you're nearsighted, how they project the image toward you. So that you create a really wrong sense of depth, really, with glasses, farsighted and nearsighted.
You have miscoordination between two major functions. The focusing and the aiming are not in the same place.
Right. So you would definitely then recommend, like, no matter how, like, even let's say you're -13 patient from back in the day, would you recommend doing this without glasses, or would it be helpful to do this with glasses too? I know we asked that in the beginning, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, -13, I would say that you could do it both ways.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing it without your glasses, -13 is somewhere here is where they see clearly.
Right.
So you may want to just do something that's all that close, except it could strain your eyes because you're constantly looking in. But you could get a -10 and be able to project further out. Yeah. So I would get, you can get if you were -13, you could go to the Dollar Tree and buy a pair of +2.5s and put that on over your -13, and that would give you less prescription. And now you could see things that are clearly like maybe a foot or 2 feet away, so you can begin to see clearly. You don't have to see real clearly to do the chopstick fusion.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Let's look at. There's so many questions.
It's a very individual thing.
Okay, so somebody was asking what the point was of what like, let's see, Wendy was asking this earlier. Now I can't find the question anymore, but how does this help with let me find this. There's so many comments, which is cool, but I'm trying to see. Give me 1 second, finding the question. No, I can't find it. No, that was a different one. Oh yeah, one person said, does it matter if the lamp in the background is seen as 2 lamps while I'm seeing the 3 sticks? That means she's not focusing on the lamp then.
Yeah, what happens, I mean, if you look at the thing, your target, which is the lamp or whatever, and you move your stick so you see 3 while you're looking at the lamp, if you stop looking at the lamp and you look at the sticks, then you lose the whole image. You lose, and you have to get it back and say, oh, wait a minute, it's gone. What am I doing? People go to it. It's all confused. I had it for a second. And then what happened is they stopped looking at the target. They stopped looking at the lamp or whatever they were looking at. So you just have to remind yourself, oh, wait a second, I had it for a second. Now it's gone. Oh, I'm not looking at the lamp or whatever the target is.
Right. And the question, how does this help to see better, that was from very early. We obviously answered that question. Irene asked, does it matter if you have a dominant eye? I mean, we all have a dominant eye, but so I would say
Yes,
no.
it does, because you could suppress the stick, the third stick, the middle, not the middle stick, but yeah. So there are other exercises that are designed to, let's see if I can find something that would illustrate it. I just made all kinds of targets up, that we could use. These targets, that are made of two things that you make three out of. So this is another one.
That's the one we sent
three.
out. Yeah, that's the one I sent out with instructions.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So it's I'd like to talk about it, but I'll just say that this one was a way to try to get people who had a difficult time diverging their eyes. It was a way of teaching them how to do it, because a lot of people, they can converge easily, but they can't diverge easily, or maybe at all. Other people that can diverge easily, but they have a hard time converging. And so I want to increase their capacity to do that. So I had all these charts that many of these charts I made up because Rebecca, my wife, it was cross-eyed. That's how we met. And so I made all kinds of charts to try to correct her cross-eyed problem. And they were all had to do with this. What I wanted to show, they all have, they're based on the same principle. This one is little dots that are close together. You take these two dots and you try to make three out of them. And then once you're able to do that, you'll see a little bit in 3D. You can do it converging or you can do it diverging. And then you begin to try to go along the string of pearls. And what happens is suddenly it jumps and you lose it. So it's a way of giving you fine control. What Bates was talking about, when you start to get really tiny ones. I made a chart, the last chart of this is like, they're really tiny, almost like periods, and close together. So in order to get that, you have to really be able to focus, but not tense up to do it. So it's a way of using the same idea of making three and seeing the depth. So this was for being able to have fine control with relaxation, to do fine looking.
And I think this is all on your website, right? Those, I think on your website you have a whole lot of downloads. Is that?
Yeah, so
okay,
I'm sure
yeah.
that some of those are, yeah. I was just gonna say for.
You have to bring you back. There's so many questions. It's like,
okay, I'm here.
No, I'm just saying, like, in terms of all the different other exercises that you're showing, but you can go to his website and there's lots and lots of good downloads. I just want to make sure if there's any other questions about this. So one person is asking, what if one eye is nearsighted, one eye is farsighted, and what about strong amblyopia? So obviously practice, right? That would be my guess. I mean, amblyopia, I don't know if this person has no vision in one eye or if it's just really weak, but anything you want to say to that?
Well, one of the things that surprised me as I was practicing and running into amblyopes, amblyopia, again, is like I talked about before, is that your attention, the place where you put your attention is not the same place that you put your aiming. Your fovea is aiming at one place and your attention is somewhere else. And that happens, it's very, what's the right word?
Common?
It's a very important part of how the eyes work.
Okay.
So one of the things that surprised me was that, gee, this kid has really good three-dimensional vision in spite of his amblyopia. He had the perception of 3D because I would test his 3D vision. I thought he wouldn't have any. But I think doing these charts with these sticks, and by the way, I got to be like obsessive. I'd go to the doctors and they would be using sticks to do different things with, and they're usually late, when they have you sit in the room there for a long time before they come in. So I would look at all the things that they use to do examinations, and I would where's the other one now? Well, I would take I'd say, oh, those are great. I'll use a little ball on top to do it. So this side has little circles. So I'll see if I can do it with that. Or this is a stick that you would mix your drink with. So I said, I wonder if I use this, how would that be? And so I have collections of all kinds of different kinds of chopsticks and so forth to see if there's one of these types of targets that is better to use. And I think one of the ones that's easier are these barbecue skewers. They come in different lengths and so forth. And these are big fat ones compared to these. And they're shorter, so you can carry them. But yeah, so, and you can use your fingers or use pens. So if you say, gee, I want to see 3D now, I want to practice. It doesn't take much to get a pair of things that you can use. Okay, so let's get some more questions.
Yeah, so the amblyopia, like if the vision in one eye is really, really weak, like you basically barely see, is there any tips for that?
Yeah, I mean, one tip is to put a patch on your face. You could do it with a Post-it note and cut it out a little bit so that it's not quite as wide. So that means that this is my dominant eye. If I'm looking at this side of the patch, we call that a binasal occluder, I'm going to use one eye. This eye is going to be now the one that I use. So you're giving a chance. What they've done in the past is to cover one eye totally.
Right.
I've read articles where they say, never take, even for 1 second, take that patch off.
Oh, I remember
the amblyoptic eye. So, but then they began to say, no, that's really hard on the child and so forth. And the other kids tease them because they're wearing a patch and make it look like Superman. So it doesn't get, anyway. But something like this where you're constantly suddenly turning this eye on. There's other ways of doing it as well, where you're something you'd have to buy special, something that, if you put plastic Scotch tape that's kind of stippled, so you can't really see through it, just light. If you put that on one pair of one side of glasses, so now I can see that this is my amblyoptic eye, and I go like that, and I'm now looking out of but I can still see through the Scotch tape. So there's a company that made that kind of paste-on thing, but instead of having just one that you can just see light coming through, you have one that's a little less stippled, has less. So now you can actually see the shape of something, and then one that's even less, and now you can begin to see more details in the shape. And so finally you get down to one that hardly changes at all. And it came on a stick. And as you brought the stick down, then you would find one that allowed the dominant eye, the good eye, to be able to see, but the clearest eye was the one that was the amblyoptic eye. So the amblyoptic eye then would get more and more opportunity to work, but you're not totally blocking the good eye. So so that worked very well for me. That was the one that I liked the most, where I would cover the eye, the dominant eye, with a slightly stippled thing, and then as the eye got better, I would get less and less stippled ones, because that eye is still seeing better than the dominant eye, and that could change it. Otherwise, most of the things are using certain kinds of equipment that allow you to identify where your fovea is, and you learn how to move your attention to where your fovea is.
So we have just a couple more questions, then we have to come to a close. But Laurie's asking, can we get the same benefit practicing this while wearing regular or multifocal contact lenses? And we already talked about the glasses. So multifocal contact lenses, I know they're circular, but I don't know enough about how does that affect? That would affect your depth perception, obviously, because of the different diopters, right?
Well, the fact that you're not wearing, when your prescription gets higher than say -4, you're actually seeing a difference in a big difference in size. There's a minification that happens because of the shape of the lens. So then when you put contacts on, then suddenly you don't have that minification. So things will look a little bit bigger to you. And the brain makes, the brain makes things bigger. When you cross your eyes and look at something, the brain actually makes the size look smaller. If you diverge and see 3 and look at something like the presbyopia chart, if you're diverging the chart, which means that you're looking beyond, like I'm looking at the camera, and I've got this, and I can see 3 balls. It's something it's just too much to teach. But the point is when I'm diverging, the letters look bigger to me. My brain interprets them in a different way. When I'm converging and looking at this chart, then I'm converging these two just like we did the sticks. When I'm doing that and I'm converging, the letters actually shrink. And if I diverge, the letters get a little bit bigger, significantly bigger. Another thing you can do with amblyopia is so what's going on here is that one eye is looking at this and the other eye is looking at this. We start with the dots because they're easy to fuse. And eventually you get to be able to do with this chart what you were doing with the sticks, except now I have an extra column on each side. So you're making 3 of these, and if I move my eyes over here, I can converge my eyes and fuse the 2 middle ones. And I can come down and say, gee, when I do that, I can read all the way down to here. Before I could only read this far down. The letters got smaller. This is for farsightedness and presbyopia training. Okay. Now, if I were looking at these 2, okay, I can see the print with this eye, the eye that looks at this one, but this one has a dot where the print is. And the question is, can I still see the print even though one eye is looking at this and one eye is looking at this one? If my dominant eye is looking at this one, I'm going to see the dot and I won't see any of the print behind it unless I do things to try to make that print visible, okay? But if this is where the dominant eye was and the other eye saw this one, then I'm not going to see, I'm just going to see a kind of an outline of a black dot, but I'll be able to read all the letters. So this is a way of bringing out the vision of a non-dominant eye by looking at print that is hidden. And so you try to bring that print out by shaking it or putting a light on it or putting darkness on. There are ways of doing that. I can't go into all those details, but.
No, I know. You're already doing a lot, and I think we've been going for like over an hour.
Yeah, we talked about not giving too much information.
So, but I think we have to come to a close. The one last question, I think, just to be very clear, that one, aren't focusing and aiming the same thing? Could Ray use a drawing, or could Ray explain? This is the last question today. Sorry, you guys, we have to come to a close. Aren't focusing and aiming the same thing?
So Bates used a term that's quite common in vision training, which is called eccentric fixation. Okay, Bates was talking about central fixation, but he said people that don't have central fixation have eccentric fixation. In optometry, it means that when you've marked the fovea, when you give some way so the person knows where their fovea is aiming, and then you have them look at something, instead of looking at where their fovea is aiming, they're actually looking at some other place. Their aim is not in the same place that their attention is not in the same place that their aiming is, and that's a problem. And I think a lot of people have that to some degree, and it creates disturbance in how the eyes are working and takes effort to see things.
Well, thank you so much, Ray. I mean, we have to come to close on the YouTube Live. We have a few more minutes on the Clear Vision Club, but other than that, we have to say goodbye on YouTube. Thank you all for joining, and thank you, Ray. This was brilliant. And if you didn't get everything, watch the replay. It's going to be the same link. so you can watch this, and I hope we can bring Ray back at some point and talk. You have so much to share. You're just amazing.
Yeah. Okay. There is a website, my website, which is raygottlieb.com.
Yeah. In the chat, raygottlieb.com. Really easy.
And you can go there, and if you go through the different places, you'll find some other writing and some other exercises that are there that you may want. So
there's
they're all free.
Exercises, there's stories, there's this whole download of his book on the trampoline attention and memory training. You give everything away for free, Ray, which is just amazing. But it's a different story having you explain it and demonstrate it versus just reading the instructions, right? Because sometimes we just don't get it. So thank you everybody for attending. I put the link in the chat of this website, and we will just end the YouTube live. So see you guys next week on YouTube. Bye.
Bye.
All right. So I